Our program will start with talk on Francis D. Kitching's book titled Architecture, Form, Space and Order. Now, I would like to welcome the moderator of today, A.R. Pital Ma'ruf, to preside over the event. For your information, A.R. Pital Ma'ruf holds Master in Architecture from University of Texas and Bachelor in Architecture from Pratt Institute, New York City. He is the Principal and Managing Director at Architect Pital, Sol and Ellen Syndrome Berhad, and is currently the Director of Architect Sinabina Syndrome Berhad. He is an avid art collector and is the owner and founder of Gallery Rumah Lukis, an independent art gallery. He also co-curated Voice and Remix at the Venice Biennale 2010 till 2012 and served the editorial team of Architecture Asia magazine. Now, please.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to Cik Shanizam Samsuri, Cik Zahari, Galleryfromhome. Thanks for, and all the audience, thanks for inviting me today to moderate this session. And to all, thanks for choosing Borak Buku, the book talk, as your afternoon or as your Saturday afternoon date today. Thank you. I think mentioned by Cik Shanizam just now, I think the goal for this book talk is to expand the audience, understanding and immersive experience from the current exhibition to cater to various level of groups, people, professions, not only architecture. So they had a session on art performance a few weeks ago, and of course 2 or 3 art discourses lately. And then today we're going to share from the perspective of a book chosen by our special guest. A little bit of knowledge on the structure of this talk today. We have 4 or 5 sessions, very loosely structured. So first I will introduce the speaker and then introduce a little bit of the book. And then the speaker will talk greatly in terms of the 4W, when, why, where's, whereabout, about the books, of course. And then a little bit of the process. When I say process, I refer to the impact of the book on the speaker and other stories hidden behind it, the one that you wanted to share. And then the challenge, when I say challenge, is how the books has developed from day one, the one that you have it, experience it, learn it, and until now, yeah. And then later we'll take some Q&A session, and then conclude with the conclusion. I think the act of reading is a bit different than the act of viewing an exhibition or other medias, yeah. So I think one thing that separates the 2 activities is the concentration. You really need to have, a little bit more concentration in reading and understanding the words, so you will grasp and understand the meaning of what the author tried to convey. I think these mental engagements are the one that somehow, whether you have it or whether you're taking it too seriously, and then you prefer other things. Okay, so later we will ask our speaker how is this promote him to engage reading as his preoccupation. Okay, now without further ado, I will introduce our guest speaker, Associate Professor Architect Salih Adriasalkom. Such a well-rounded personality architect, yeah. As a practitioner, he also an activist with the Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia and also the Green Building Index body. Also an advisor and evaluator at GBI, and also an academician at University Malaya. So let me read the biodata, shortly because it's very long actually. So, but the most important thing, I met Architect Salih about in 2012, I think, when we were together representing the nation at the Venice Architecture Biennale in 2012. Yeah, And then again, bump into him quite often at the University Malaya where he teaches. Of course, as an award-winning architect, he involved as his practice, and also focus on futuristic aspect of architecture solutions. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. And also the ex-deputy president of PAM, and also with GBI. Yep. So that's and also an avid reader and activist, promoting architecture to the masses. Okay. So the first session, I think I would like Architect Saldi to explain about the book, why you chose the book, and what's how you were introduced to it, a little bit of history, if you don't mind.
Assalamualaikum, very good afternoon. This is the book actually, Architecture, Form, Space and Order, Francis D.K. Ching. It's about 350 pages. This is the first edition, which I got in 1995. So I brought the actual edition. Now the younger set, the latest one, is the 4th edition, which contains 100 more pages, I think. So my talk later on, I have prepared some slides from that book. But why I chose this book is because it has a lot of wisdom. I think when you have a very complex topic like architecture, which is multifaceted, cuts through all social strata, cuts through all levels of intellectual discourse, it's very difficult to actually distill what is architecture and how is the process done. But this book does it very well, and it is one of those books that an architect who's very, very seasoned will appreciate, and also somebody who is a layperson would appreciate as well, because it's a very beautiful book. It communicates through very, very clear graphics. I will show you later. And sometimes why I want to revisit this book after, say, how many, nearly 20 plus years, is because once you have the wisdom and the knowledge, you appreciate it more. Because now I understand. Previously you were seeing with eyes that do not understand. But once you understand, then you say, no wonder it was like that. So perhaps later on I prepared some slides. Yeah. Just proceed. And I think before I was in an introductory sort of like studies before I went to the UK to study in the University of Liverpool. So prior to that, I was in UiTM as a preparation for that. So it was one of the prescribed reading lists. Yeah, so everybody had to buy the book, and I thought, it was not going to be that impactful. Textbook. It's basically a textbook. They say. Yeah. So I chose this image because this is the Kufi Hut of Bismillah. It is the starting of the Quran, and the Quran is a very big book, and as I myself as Muslims, and if you know any fellow Muslims, they know that everything is encompassed inside the Quran. But many Muslims believe that the Quran itself is encompassed within one verse of seven verses, which is the Al-Fatiha, which is the start. But all those can be encompassed in this simple phrase, which is Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of the Almighty, the Merciful and Almighty. So the starting of the Quran itself encompasses everything. But those who do not understand or do not have knowledge would not appreciate it. But if you finish the whole document, you finish the whole book, then you will understand why this phrase is very important. And perhaps that's why, if you notice, in many things, a lot of Muslims will start their day with Bismillah, start their food with Bismillah, will start because it encompasses that the whole idea of the religion. Next, please. And the idea that simple phrases coded into our lives needs to be decoded is once again becomes reality, because nowadays this is actually a QR code to my personal card. So your actual identity now is ingrained in a few dots, yeah, in a few square dots. So that's who you are, basically. Next. And logos also has meaning as such. So this is the logo to my firm. And it has a significance whereby you identify with this logo. Next. And of course, art, which has driven both architects as like architecture is a mother of all arts, yeah. And this is I'm sure you know, it's a Modrian painting, which you will see that the geometry of it is very architectural, and you will see why I've chosen this piece of art, because in the context of where we are in an art gallery and how the relationship with form, space, and order can be seen here later, and can also be relatable to one another. Next. And of course, this is taken from the book itself. It's the drawing of Vitruvian Man, how our sort of dimensions and who we are as human beings also encompassed in a single drawing. And if for those of you who are not familiar with the book, all the original first edition drawings were done in sketches. So it's a book of sketches explaining exactly what it means, form, space, and order in architecture. Next. And it's filled with important buildings and very nicely done drawings, like Villa Savoy here of Corbusier, which is one of the signature buildings of any architecture student. Next. And which actually relates to myself as a practitioner, and also when I think there are two types of practitioners basically in Malaysia: those who really sort of concentrate on business, and perhaps another type of practitioner like architect Pital, who has other interests like one in the art world. Yeah. So my interest is in the academic, in research, and in publication. So but this is part of that sort of like interest, whereby I'm part of the magazine. Currently, I'm coming back as the chief editor. I was the chief editor last time, and it is just part of that intertwining path of your life, you know, the book, because it sort of like completes. It's not just about drawings. It's about form. It's about how you explain things very simply. Next. And again, when you look at great architecture, like this is Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright, but when it's done in a sketch form, you can see the actual elements far more clearly than you can see a picture. So, next. And this relationship between architecture and art is all encompassing. This is I have a few pictures of travel. Perhaps this is the Louvre, and as you well know, famous artworks like Mona Lisa is there. But people identify with iconic architecture as a place where art is, even if it's whatever art gallery or modern art gallery.
Sally, before you move on to more pictures, I just want to get back to the sketches. I think what was my question, maybe the audience also want to know, what was your impression when you see the book first time? Keep in mind, the books are like a syllabus to a first year architecture student. In fact, when I got it, I feel like, wow, there's so many sketches am I be able to do as good sketches as that? What was your impression and your feeling?
I think similar. I feel quite intimidated because it's done so well. But I think it's also an inspiration that many would want to be as good, to actually be able to express your ideas in sketches rather than, I think, the predominant way of communicating now is through computer graphics, which I think is not as powerful as a simple sketch. And something towards the end, I'm going to show you how it has impacted our work. And I think sometimes a computer sketch render is nicer.
Just one more question. I think the strength of the book, as mentioned by Architect Sali, is the hand-drawn and hand-lettered. In fact, that is the strength. And also, I think the critics have a little bit of asking about that, because the text was written by this font. I can't remember the type. It's not easily read. You see. So in the reading, the font type, the graphic side of it, there's certain type font that you use to make your reading pleasurable or smooth. So I think Professor Professor D.K. Ching chose these words that basically mimicking his handwritten actually. So that's when the thing. So the hand drawn and hand lettered. What was your stage back then in terms of sketching and things like that?
Of course, when you're entered first year, you're not actually a trained architect. So I was more doing comics. But lettering was nice, and I really liked the lettering style actually. And later on, actually, this book is so influential in the design circle. It's not just about architecture; it's interior design. It's a lot of design circles that Adobe, the big software that does Photoshop, InDesign, and all the other software, actually took that handwriting and made it into a font called Tecton. So Tecton is now used by, you can download it, and a lot of Adobe software actually use Tecton as an official font. So that's how influential this single way of presentation has happened.
That was the font just now. I'm trying to Tecton. I think it is one of those font that is not meant to be in a very concise reading, things like that. It's supposedly not smooth, soothing or friendly to the eyes. But obviously, the book is in its 4th edition now, so you can tell that there's something must be right about the book, regardless of the font that it was being used. You may proceed, Architect Sali.
Yes, this is a picture. If any of you are architecture buffs, you will know that this is the fire station that Zaha Hadid actually designed. And if you know Zaha Hadid is a very famous architect who has passed away. And I just cornered this picture because it's quite inspirational and it's got a significance. Because Zaha was somebody who believed in what she did. She did something that is against the grain, and she didn't care what people think. And her building never got built actually. So this was the first building that got built, and which was significant. But it was built in Basel, in a furniture factory campus, and it was meant to be a fire station. But because of all the very confusing walls, it didn't function so well as a fire station because the firemen kept getting confused, and it turned into a museum. And but it was Zaha's very sort of like wild ideas. She did paintings, she did models that were outrageous, and but whatever the critics, she had so many critics, but finally she got something built. And it is significant because a lot of architects, they fall into this trap of compliance, to comply to other people so fast, and not believing in themselves. And if Zaha did not believe in herself, she would not have become the household name that she is now. Next slide, please. And this was her first major building done in Rome, the Maxi Museum. And only after this building that you will see all the other buildings in the world get built. And this was completed in 2010. And she died just 7 years after that. And actually, after this, she got a lot of commissions after this building, because it's a major build. What this building taught the construction world, which was very risk averse. That means they don't take architects at very, buildings or not, or whose names are not, nobody will pay for what you want to do. But this was the first building that proved that actually what she drew can actually be built, and her concepts are getting traction and all that. But unfortunately, her life was not that long, that she did not enjoy the thing. But the lesson here is, I think, to keep doing what you enjoy and keep at it until you reach that point where the world follows you. And I think Frank Ching, the writer of the book, actually does that. And other than this book, in a similar fashion, he has written 10 other books. Building construction, building about sustainability, in a similar fashion with all the diagrams and whatnot. Next. Okay, this is a slightly groovy picture of me with a longer hair. I used to have a ponytail, by the way, but my mom asked me to cut it, so I had to cut it. This is Morphosis Cooper Square in New York, yeah. And I think I chose this image because although you see that this is a totally sort of like a random or non-square building, or there are a lot of angles, and the technical term would be deconstructivist type of architecture, but the precepts, the ideas, the way that it's arranged is actually following form, space and order. So doesn't mean that things doesn't look the way it is. The fundamentals are not the same. So the strength of this book is actually getting that fundamental across very, very strongly. Next. And trying to really explain, because something like architecture is very difficult to explain. Next. How to distill architecture into its basic ingredients. And you have 3 big words: form, space and order. And it's distilled further. Next. Next. So I think in the introduction, this is taken directly from the book, yeah, from the PDF copy of the 4th edition. So you have architectural systems like space structure, enclosure, movement in space-time, technology, program, context. All these are actually ingredients of a project, and how to formulate an architectural program. Next. And the orders of doing so. We have the physical, we have the perceptual, and we have the conceptual. And actually, this simplification is very, very apt, because if you can see perceptual, it's a single sentence. Sensory perception and recognition of the physical elements by experiencing them sequentially in time. A lot of other books tend to write so many things, but to actually distill something into its very roots is something only somebody who is actually very knowledgeable at that particular skill can do that. So this book has been able to do that. I mean, like really, really distill, really, really show you what is that thing. Yeah. Next. And explain it in a way that it is easily understand. Like for example here, a simple breakdown of spatial systems and structural system and how is it enclosed. So you can see that in the diagrams you see the space that's enclosing, you see the structure, you see how it is enclosed around. Very clearly, very ordered, so that there's no confusion, and very straightforward text. It's not overly intellectual, trying to make the author sound superbly smart, but it's just stating the simple truth.
Just hold on, Architect Sali. I think for the general audience, I think Professor Ching mentioned that he used semantic as how he come up with the book actually. So one must know the alphabets A, B, and C, and then from then compose to a word, and then the word becomes sentences, things like that. So imagine this in the visual context. So that's why the proposition for this book come about. So the analogy with semantics with words are his basic ideas, how he started the project. So in that case, if A is the beginning of something, probably one line, whether it's vertical or horizontal, can be the starting point of something. Yeah. So when two lines, when A plus A become R, something like that. So the two lines will become an aisle. So I thought that's quite simple. Even no matter how we have this basic vocab that he promotes and he developed, and then later he chose the best building to propose to convey his visual proposition. Not everybody can do this. What is your thought? Is it a syllabus that can be taught to anybody that wants to do, come up with all this to translate this hypothesis?
I think you're exactly right. It is a breakdown. It is actually teaching how to compose good architecture. So from the basic alphabets to words, and then perhaps an essay or story, right, and a narrative. But anybody can do it actually. But whether you see it or not, and that's why I was telling in the beginning. When you have seen many stories, then you appreciate how it's been taught, the simplicity of it, how it's been taught, because you have read stories before, and this is a very good way of teaching how to write, and that's what the book does actually, and that's why it's also a recommendation for non-architects. It can be, and in fact. A lot of other fields, design-related fields, use this book as a guide, because the aesthetic lessons in it is universal almost.
One thing that impressed me a lot is the consistency on his line drawing. It is so consistent. It is like, it's being done. We do things at the mercy of time and energy, am I right? So maybe the first hour is so correct, so thick, and so perfect. Entering the second hour, things get a little bit here and there. That is human nature. That is the fitrah of manusia, the people, see. But he is so...
He has a gift.
Exactly. I think that's a gift. Is either he's cheating on certain things, take a break, have a burger, coke, and then do it again. So I think regardless of that, the beauty of the sketches and the renderings are superb. It is, yeah.
So next. So this is Frank Ching. Sorry?
This is the first time I've seen this.
Oh, seriously?
Yes. I don't know how it looks like.
So this is how it looks like. I was just correcting some of my friends just now. I knew, thought he was dead already. He's not. He's still alive.
And he's a lefty.
Yes, he is. He's left-handed. So next page, some information about him. So he's Professor Emeritus at University of Washington, and Adobe Tecton. There's a brief write-up and some of the other things that he did, and went on to produce 12 books, including building construction and all this. I think basically what we mentioned just now, and he's a very well-respected person in academia and also the design field. Next. And this is back to, I think, what Architect Pital was mentioning. This is from the first chapter where it is the single line. what is 2D, what is 3D. So it's very well explained that there's no confusion. Yeah, and what is a point and how points are used. Next. And chapter 2 is about form already. And form can be anything, any shape, size, color, texture. Next. And the way that I'm of course keeping pages because it's the book is 66 pages long, so I'm just giving a sample of what it is. And if you can notice, he talks about form, then he tries to relate it to actual buildings and actual examples that are using the principles that he has just mentioned. Yeah. So like a shape, circular, and negative, positive shape. Yeah. Next. And how people utilize forms in design. We have things like subtractive form. We have additive form, and how a plan view would be, a three-dimensional view would be, and an additive form, how edge-to-edge contact, face-to-face contact, interlocking volumes. So this is actually the vocabulary of designing architecture. So he is actually teaching you how to actually put together masses and shapes so that the buildings would have harmony, balance, and aesthetically pleasing. The third chapter is form and space. So once you have seen the basic dimensions, then you're looking at a form, and then thirdly, how do you combine form with space itself? And space is something that has been enclosed. Yeah. So it is different than the form. As you can see in this very nicely done cross section of the Pantheon, you can see a section at the left, and then you can see the form of the building on the right. So the space within is clearly denoted, and he also clearly explains this unity of opposites, or sometimes we call as negative space. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this optical illusion of the two-faced vase. Yeah. Next. And he brings it out to larger scales, many other examples, how to use this vocabulary. It's similar to what you said just now, the teaching of letters, words, and giving examples of paragraphs. And this is what this is, paragraphs of how to actually compose architecture. Next. And how to make it more interesting by using, say for example, planes. You are placing the planes differently would affect how people perceive where you are, the space in spatial sense. So he's actually teaching, he gives notes on how people would react and what sort of things you feel, and the diagrams itself is very telling of, if you make a space lowered, you would feel you need to look up, or you feel trapped, or that kind of feeling that you have, and it is a different feeling than you just have a linear sort of space. And he, if you can see, he immediately say this, for example, he's explaining about the elevated plane, and immediately after that he gives real life examples of the actual buildings and actual places that you can easily, as a student or somebody who is interested in this topic, can actually look up and see. So the relationship is very clear.